Welcome to the Raising Mothers podcast. I'm your host, Ashley Kahn. I'm a wife, a mama to two, and a certified conscious parent coach practitioner. It is my mission to guide mothers in transforming the way they connect, communicate, and collaborate with their teen. Every week, I will be bringing you inspiring, empowering, and educational episodes that will give you the tools you need to consciously raise your teenager. All right, let's do this. Today, I am so excited to share with all of you two special guests, and that is Joe and Mell Hashey. Joe is a former high school teacher and business owner, and Mell is a former social worker turned stay-at-home mom to three boys. In 2020, the Hashey family found themselves at a crossroad where everything was turned upside down, and they literally changed everything. Together, Joe and Mell took the opportunity to use their experiences and start what is today known as the Strong Family Co. The Strong Family Co. is built around 7 elements that really creates and fosters an environment for families to establish values and stress-free family leadership. In today's episode, we are going to dive into one of their 7 elements, and that is confidence building and goal setting systems, which I'm so excited about because being mamas of teens, confidence building is crucial in our teenagers thriving, and goal setting systems will allow them to put things in place to create an environment for them to thrive. So welcome to the podcast, Joe and Mell.
Thank you so much for having us, Ashley.
Yeah, thank you so much.
I'm excited to talk to you guys and really dive into this topic because I know it's going to be so powerful for the Raising Mothers podcast listener. Okay, so before we get started, I would love to hear a little bit more about your guys' journey that led you to where you are now and what the heck happened in 2020 that turned your family upside down and, created huge change within your family.
Sure, we'd love to share our story. So we were living in upstate New York, and pre-2020, we thought we were living life pretty well. We were living in our dream home. We had some ponds in the back. The kids were really happy. And Joe is running a couple fitness facilities. And then COVID hit, and we were shut down. And as everyone, I'm sure, understands, that was a shock to the system. And we really didn't know where that was going to go with our company. So Joe and I like to take walks every day. It's something that we had started back in the day and has become part of the Strong Family Path, but it's our way to reconnect. And Joe said to me, "What if we moved?" And I completely panicked because that's all we ever knew was living there. Our families are there. And after thinking about it, there was just something enticing about it. So the next morning we looked at a list of the states and we thought, where could we end up? And we decided that Joe had been working so hard at his company. He was a teacher for a while and running the business, and we really weren't spending enough time on our family organization and making our family life strong. So we just took this leap. We thought, what if we just move across the country to a place that embodies our core values, which is another piece of what we love to talk about, is that every family could have their own core values. And that helped us to guide us to decide to make this huge move. And at that point, this was in 2021 that we actually got in the U-Haul and the van and drove cross country, which was an adventure all in of itself. And when we ended up here over the last year or so, we just recognized that there were things in our family life that we were doing repetitively that we could create into like a system to share with other families. So someone might visit us and pop in and say, "Wow, I really like how you do your goal setting or your family meetings. Could you share that?" So we knew we had some piece of gold for people that we could share, which is why we are here where we are today. Our podcast is really a passion project for us to just share with other families.
I love that. I love how you said other people recognize that you have these systems in place, and it sounds like they noticed that your family was set apart in a way. What for you did that look like in the sense of like your systems, and how did it create more connection within your family, more peace in your home?
So we originally, when we were living in New York, we had set up our core values a couple years back. And right after we did that, we started running family meetings with the kids. And I know that can sound kind of boring, but we do it in a fun, exciting way. And it just created this situation every week where we could get together as a family, discuss any kind of topics that have come up, talk about how we're embodying the family values, give each other compliments. And that created it created a space for really good communication between us and the kids. And they have an opportunity during the meetings as well to, talk to us about whatever's on their mind. So I think that was a big piece of creating peace in the
Yeah.
family because everybody had a time, they knew a time to expect to be able to come together and discuss things. So that was really important for us moving forward.
I love that. I always talk about how every human, but especially our children, have three core needs, and that is to be seen, to be heard, and to feel like they belong. And so I love this concept of family meetings within your home because it's creating that space, one, for them to feel safe to come to you guys. And really create a strong, authentic family connection, but two, a space for them to be seen, to be heard, and feel like they belong in your family. So I think that is so amazing and definitely something everybody can implement. And it doesn't even have to be something formal, but something that your kids expect, you know, frequently, whether it's like every other day or at dinner, creating, a few minutes to go over these things. I think that is huge and huge in building confidence because when children feel seen, heard, and like they belong, they develop this sense of confidence, which is what we're going to dive into today. So if we can start going into the confidence building, I'd love to start there because I feel like in order to achieve goals, set goals, the foundation really has to have some sense of confidence. So talk to me and the listener a little bit more about how you guys even came up with this one element, confidence building and goal setting systems, the thought process behind it.
I really like how you included belonging in your list. I think that is kind of the basis of confidence. If you create an organization that increases their self perception, if they're a part of, you can do that in the household. It doesn't have to be done outside of the household. So after teaching for a while, I coached a lot of sports and trained a lot of athletes, and they would feel like a special pride or confidence if they were on like a quote unquote good team. Same when now we work with families who do music or whatever else, they feel more confident when they're part of a high functioning organization. So we want to provide that for them at home to help build their confidence. Like, hey, we take this family life seriously. We're just not going to let life happen. We're going to be intentional about a lot of the things that we're going to do, including our goal setting system, which we'll talk about in a minute. But like you mentioned, Ashley, it is based around confidence. Like you can't achieve much if you don't have a good self worth, self perception, and we help that by letting them be seen and heard at our family meetings, running a tight ship, making sure that when they give us feedback, we take it humbly and let them be a real part and belong to something that is a little bit more higher functioning than perhaps they've been used to in other instances.
Yeah, and one of the mindsets that we love to work from is that each person in our family is a contributor. So we're all on this team, like Joe mentioned, or like when we have in the morning, we have chores that we each do. Now, I don't like calling them chores. We like to call them contributions. So when you unstack the dishwasher, you are contributing to the family system in the morning. I mean, this is how we get things done. And every time you get something done or you contribute to a goal, whether it even be having the morning go smoothly, it's like a small win. Instead of just rolling out of bed and like starting your day, you start your day with a win. You start your day with contributing, and that already sets you up with some confidence. So it's almost this family culture that we've created just by like the language and the words that we choose to use, like contributor versus do your chores.
Mhm. And as you guys are both sharing, the common like thread that I keep hearing is you guys are at the end of the day a team. And Joe, I love how you said, we take feedback from the kids humbly. I think that's so huge in the family dynamic and creating a team because a team works when everyone has feedback and you're all working together, not just when the coach is telling every single teammate what to do, how to be, what to say, right? Like you see the individual player and you take whatever their feedback is and how can we all work together. I think that's huge for parents, especially parents of teens, because all too often us parents think that we know everything and our child just needs to do whatever we say. So putting this team analogy into the family, I really feel like helps kind of bring everybody's walls down and come to a even playing field, if you will, for keeping with the analogy of a team where, okay, I'd love to hear your thoughts, I'd love to hear how you're feeling, or I'd love to hear how your feedback, and for the parent not to take it personally, but like you said, Joe, humbly, and then how can we work together moving forward. So I love this team analogy and this really camaraderie and this connection that is being built. Like you were saying earlier, Joe, that builds confidence in the child when they feel like they belong and you're hearing each other.
Yeah, and I actually thought of two examples. I'm sure your audience has
Yes.
examples too. So at our family meeting, when we do discussion topics, one of the big ones that comes up is tech
Mm.
time. So if we notice that there's an issue going on with tech, and we try to have a really strict schedule and like a checklist, but we turn it back to the kids. We say, "Here's the issue we're seeing," and actually sometimes they bring it up as an issue. We turn it back to them and we say, "We'd love to hear your suggestions. What do you think we could do to make this work?" And I think almost 100% of the time, we go with their solution. We're like, "Let's try this for a week and see how it works." And that gives them confidence. Like they contributed a solution and we actually are following through with it. And another component is we do tough truths where the kids can say something to us. They can kind of call us out, or we can call them out again in this loving way. It's important to be able to give criticism and then be able to take it humbly. And sometimes they call us out. So, just a silly example, my son told me one day that he did not like a dinner that I made. So like that's important for me to know. I don't want to make things that you're not going to eat. So the fact that he was able to share that in a safe space and that I was able to take that and not get all upset because, I cooked it or whatever. And then I'm like, "Okay, great. If you didn't like that, give me another option. What would you like?" So they really feel like they are a valuable asset to our team.
And what as you're talking, the word empower comes to my mind because what you're really doing is you're empowering them with confidence to be able to share their thoughts and their feelings. And you, as a parent, are obviously you've probably done your own work, so you're able to receive that. But that's huge. I love that. And I love it's so funny that you say, you often take whatever they suggest because 9 times out of 10, like the things that our kids come up with, like on their own, like their solutions are actually like way better than we could ever come up with. Like going to the tech thing, I
That's true.
remember it was probably like 4 months ago. We had a discussion and I was like, "Hey, I've noticed you guys have been on your phones more often than you normally are, so we need to cut back for for our health." And I said, what how much time do you guys think?" And I think my son said like 30 minutes. I was like, "Awesome." I was thinking like an hour, so it's like usually better than what we
Yes.
would ever think, but empowering them like to go through this thought process of like, what does it look like for me? What do I think is such a great life skill because when they leave our home, they're going to have to do that every single day of their life is come up with their own solutions instead of us just telling them what to do. Where you're getting them to think on their own and empowering them, which builds that confidence.
Yeah, exactly. And we include our 5-year-old at these meetings as well. Like, you don't have to start when they're older. It's actually great when you start when they're younger because I think our 5-year-old is the most confident person in our home. And I don't think it's just because he was born that way. I think it's because we figured out this system and he is the lucky one that gets to live with it while it's implemented all the
Mhm.
time. 13 years ago when we had our first son, we didn't have this stuff, figured out yet. So it's really great to see how confident the 5-year-old has become in speaking up, in contributing. Even when we share gratitude, like he goes around and says who gets to go first, second, third. So we're always finding a way for him to contribute, even though he's still a preschooler.
I love that. And for the moms of teens, if you're like, "Gosh, I wish I would have started earlier," it's never too late to start now. And Mel, you said systems. So what system have you guys put in place, or have you put in place a specific system for the confidence building? I know you guys have said, like, empowering them, you want to hear their thoughts, you want to guide them in finding their own solutions. Is there any other specific system that you could share with the listener to build this confidence?
Yeah, so one piece of our Strong Family Path is a goal setting system. And we think it's really important for kids as young as you possibly can to start setting goals. So not just thinking, well, I have this dream of hiking this mountain, or I have this dream of reading 5 books in the next couple months, or whatever it might be. We want it to become an actual tangible goal. So to go through our process at the beginning of the year, or really, and you could start anytime, we create something called a annual yearly vision. And what we do is each individual person in the house sits down all together. We take about 10 minutes, and we did it as a drawing this year. So you can draw anything you want to achieve the next year. It could be physical fitness related, it could be reading, it could be you want to learn about something. So everybody took that time to draw, and it was important that they didn't stop. Like, oh, usually the first couple of things you think of are the easy things. It's like you want to keep that pen moving the whole 10 minutes and just, see what happens. And it was important that we did it all individually because we recognize every person in the family has their own talents and abilities and goals and needs. So we could set family goals, but what I might want to do for myself is very different than what, my 11-year-old son might want
Mhm.
to achieve. So after we drew these pictures, we actually hung them up on the wall in the kitchen so that they're very, very visible. So the kids can see them every morning or every family meeting, we refer back to them so that it doesn't just become like something that blends into the background. And the exciting part of this, now we do try to meet every 3 months, so like a 90 days to make sure we're on par. Because sometimes if you set this annual goal, I'm going to lose 50 pounds, the first few weeks in, you might be going real strong, but by 90 days, you might have just lost it. It felt too overwhelming. So we try to chunk it down into smaller components. And what I love is that our family meetings, we set a weekly contribution.
Weekly commitment.
Oh, commitment. See, I'm stuck on that contribution word. A weekly commitment, thank you, where we look up at our vision and we ask the kids and ourselves, what is something we could do every day for 7 days that'll get us a little closer to that annual vision goal? So it might be 10 push ups. It might be read 10 minutes a day. It might be for me this week, it's drink a protein shake once a day because my diet was kind of falling off. So everybody chooses something simple just for that 7 days. So it kind of keeps it exciting. And then the final piece of the system is at the dinner table every night, we say, have you done the commitment for the day? And you either say, yep, I did mine, or you say, yeah, I haven't done it yet. And it's almost like that friendly reminder, well, you still have a couple hours left in today. You can still go out and take that 15-minute walk or, read for 15 minutes or whatever it might be. So it's keeping each other accountable, but you also have a win every day that you reach that commitment and every week that you've accomplished it. There's those little wins, and that's what builds confidence over time.
Absolutely. I love how you said accountability, holding each other accountable, because accountability and consistency is what creates great patterns. So I think, as moms of teenagers, our kids are going to be, possibly leaving our home in the next 5 years, 6 years, depending on what exact age our teenagers are. And these are great patterns and habits to continue or instill in them now so that they can continue when they are on their own. Because at the end of the day, we're always going to have different goals and things to strive for. And I love how you break it down into small, attainable, actionable steps. So you set your main goal and how you said you break it down. I think that's amazing because it makes it achievable. Sometimes, we could have these goals and sometimes kids are like, how the heck am I going to achieve that? But guiding your child and breaking it down is huge and being like, yeah, basically what you're saying is anything is possible if you break it down.
Right. And we help guide them. Like, I love that you said guide. We're not telling them what to do. Every person in the family, including the 5-year-old, they are responsible to come up with their commitment for the
Mm-hmm.
week. So the 5-year-old did 10 squats. And at preschool that morning, they did squats for whatever reason, just as part of the class. And he's like, that's my commitment for the day. So he's already, taking in that language. So I think that's the same thing that happens with the older two. They are already speaking the language. Like, they refer back to our family values. They refer back to these weekly commitments. So it just over time, that daily discipline that kind of gets you closer, and they will hopefully it'll just become part of who they
Mm-hmm.
are.
And you're right. Actually, chunking it down is so important for anyone setting goals. Being in the health and fitness industry, we see that resolution season come around. We're great at setting something that we could do 1 year from now, but we're really bad at doing the daily things to get us there. And so that's been a critical component from getting them. We will identify during the family meeting, hey, our reading time's a little off. All right, we're going to commit to 15 minutes a day for this week. Could be the commitment. Up to our 11-year-old wants to do 1,000 pull-ups in a day. I'm like, okay, well, that's just not going to happen. He started by doing 10 or 15 in the morning, 20 some days. Then you do some holds, then you do some hangs, and about 3 months of daily commitments. On his birthday. He did 1,011 for his 11th birthday. We did pull-ups for like 6 hours for his birthday.
That was amazing. And this actually brings up an interesting point where every kid in the family will be different. So, are some of the maybe one of your kids is really good at setting goals, really coming up with what they want. Other kids might need a little bit more push or a little bit more suggestion. Like I was listening to one of your podcasts, and one of the little phrases that you use that I love is, "Did you consider this?" So you're not saying, "Hey, you should do this," but you're letting them
Mhm.
think about it. You're giving them a suggestion because as the mom or the dad, you know your kid, you know what they're good at, and sometimes you kind of have to nudge them in a certain direction and get them kind of thinking about it, get that ball rolling. So I love that. All the vision boards are so different, and it's really
Mhm.
exciting.
I love how you brought that up because, yes, every child is so different. And just going back to like the three core needs, seeing the child in front of you, because each child is going to be different. They're going to have different likes, different interests, different pursuits or ambitions. And to guide them and encourage them and hold them accountable in all of those is huge in building the confidence and the patterns and or healthy habits that will carry them through life. And Joe, I love how you said it's like the daily small actionable steps. I don't know the quote, but it's like something to the extent of like, thousands of small steps um, equate to like a mile or something like that. But to the point of like every tiny step leads to huge like goals, I guess.
Yeah, one of the sayings we use is small hinges swing big doors. Like you have a big goal, you got to do the small stuff. That's what actually moves the whole thing.
Yes.
And so we talked confidence at the beginning. Like there are a few things that build confidence better than showing daily progress towards something that you want to accomplish.
Mm.
And being in a family, the exciting thing about the accountability piece, so we actually have a family goal for the next month or so to do some kind of physical activity for 1 hour a day. And this can be challenging. Yesterday was like my Costco day. So I had to go to Costco and I was out of the house for hours. And then dinner time came around and I was like, oh no, I didn't do anything for my commitment for the 60 minutes. And my older son didn't either, and the 5-year old. So we decided to take a family hike. Now, I'm not sure that everybody was really excited about that. It's tough to take a hike after you've just eaten spaghetti and meatballs. But so much wonderful came out of that. Like my older son didn't really want to do it. He ended up wearing like a weight vest and made it all the way up the mountain. We have a trail behind the house. So that if we had just sat around and said, "Oh, forget that commitment. We'll just hold off. It's too hard today." We would have seen the fruits of that
Mm.
labor. So I think on those days when you really don't want to do it, when you're really feeling like, let's just give it a pass for today, that's when the confidence starts to go
Mhm.
away. When you give yourself that pass that you don't have to complete it.
And I was listening to a podcast on goal setting, and the neuroscientist, she was explaining that whichever way you decide to go with these goals, it creates grooves in your
Mhm.
brain for you to repeat that behavior. So if we become hey, I can wait till tomorrow family, like it trains that pattern, actually changes the structure of your brain into that pattern. Or all right, well, this kind of stinks. We all know it stinks, but let's go just go walk for 60 minutes because we said we would. And if you start doing it when it's not easy, then that becomes a pattern as well.
Absolutely. And it's so crazy. I know in my own personal life, whenever I don't feel like doing something and I do it anyways, the how I feel after is amazing. You basically prove to yourself you can do things even when you don't feel like it. And that is
Yes.
encouraging for the next time, your kids or you, where you're like, oh my gosh, it's 8 o'clock and I still didn't do that. I'm going to do it anyways. And you could remind yourself how great it felt the last time I didn't feel like doing it. And I did it anyways.
Exactly. And I loved like reinforcing that with the kids too. So yesterday I made sure that I told my 13-year-old like at bedtime, I want you to remember that you did this hard thing
Mm.
today. Like you can add that to your, we call it, well, I think it was a David Goggins thing, like your mental toolbox. Or what did he call it?
Cookie jar.
Mental cookie jar. So it's like all these things these hard things you've done. So when you're facing something hard again, you can just pull from that cookie jar and remember that you did something hard before. So you're capable of doing it again.
Yeah. And our mind will always go to like negative or lack, always naturally. And the way you combat that is with truth. And so the next time you don't feel like doing something, well, the truth is it feels I did it before, I can do it again.
Yeah.
I
Right.
love that. Okay, so we all know that life does happen sometimes, right? We can have these amazing goals, we could have the best of intentions, but sometimes life just happens. where a day might come where it just might not be possible to get that done. Something unexpected, an unexpected event, or maybe an unexpected trip, or whatever it may be. How does your family handle those moments?
So when something unexpected happens, we usually roll with it with grace. We're very stringent with what we would allow as
Mm-hmm.
unexpected, though. And so it's like, hey, we're going on a trip. All right, well, it looks like we're going to be walking around the airport for 45 minutes because we got to get the rest of our time in. And they're all good with it. Like they like to try to find creative solutions on tough days. And if there ever is an instance where we are, I can't I can't think of one where we haven't been able to find a way. But if it did
Yeah.
exist, like we are driving across the country, like we would get out at the rest stops and put in 10 minutes at each one. Like, hey, we're gonna get to
Mm-hmm.
our hour. Um, to try to like those, I think, are the most important days to have wins because then in perspective, it makes all the other days seem
Mm-hmm.
easy. But we do allow grace. Like things could happen, and we just reset at our weekly meeting. Say, hey, we missed one day. It wasn't perfect. That's okay. Let's set this next 7 day pattern up for success.
Right. We don't want it to turn into like, well, if we did it that time, then we can make excuses for it later. So it's like we try to make that really clear that it's just like a blip on
Mm-hmm.
the radar. It's not like that's going to become a new pattern. And Joe mentioned creative solutions. I mean, we talked earlier about how kids are great at
Mm-hmm.
this. So there's some way. I remember Joe broke his leg and I was at the hospital with him and I had a commitment of doing some push-ups. So I was on the hospital floor, as nasty as that may sound, doing my push-ups. And it builds me up and it's like a role model. He took a picture and sent it to the kids because we as parents are role modeling this for the kids
Mm-hmm.
too. Like, oh, if mom can do that, then I can handle, doing my commitment that's different over here. So I agree, life does happen, but I think it's important to jump right back into it.
I like how you said jump right back into it because I feel like I know within our family, the goal is to do your daily goals, right? Be creative, find solutions, but sometimes life just happens. And to really instill that you didn't fail if you weren't able to make that happen that day, that you just pick up the next day, I think is a huge lesson because I know for certain personalities and certain children, they will be so hyper focused on making sure they get it done that if something happens and they can't, they will feel like they somehow didn't meet the standard. And I feel like it's so important to be like, dude, you're crushing it. That's give you yourself grace. That's life. Pick up tomorrow. It has nothing to do with your worth and what you're capable of. That is life.
Yeah, we often try to separate out the whole person from the
Yes.
choice. So I wouldn't necessarily say to my kid, well, you're a
Mm-hmm.
failure. It's like, this choice today didn't
Mm-hmm.
work out. Let's make a better choice next
Mm-hmm.
time. If it's within your control. Obviously, I know when life happens, sometimes
Yeah.
things are out of your control, but we always try to divide those things up because we don't want to create
Yes.
shame. We can just make a better choice. We can make it better tomorrow. And just again, just always that mindset of moving forward and making things better and getting back on the path.
I love that. Yeah, really, really separating what you do as being separate than from who you are as a person, I think is a very, very important
Right.
message to communicate. So I love how you said that. I love that. Is there any other like important foundations that you guys are important or you guys feel are important to lay in creating the confidence or goal settings that we haven't mentioned yet?
One piece of it is it comes from the book Power of Moments. I think it's a Chip and Dan Heath book, but trying to create memories that stick and actually help slow down our time. So I know a lot of us as parents will say, like, I can't believe the time's flown
Yeah.
by so fast. And they say, well, that is true because a lot of the days look the same. And if you can create a moment that makes it different, then you'll remember
Mm-hmm.
that day and it will be as if it were to slow down time. And so when we do like we'll set a lot of goals around celebrations like birthdays. I mentioned my son and his pull-ups. Like our goal is to create a moment, an experience, a memory and celebrate them and build up their confidence on those days versus like, hey, here's just the standard pizza and cake. And then that'll all kind of blur together. So they try to set these goals and we celebrate what they've accomplished birthday to birthday based on a lot of these things, whether it's reading or physical accomplishment, go climbing a mountain together on a holiday, like trying to create these moments that are more powerful, that are a culmination of their goals. So that stuff doesn't just sit in the background and they just have their small daily progress, but never see the payoff.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And I think the other piece that's super important is just having family core values. And this is the foundation for all the elements of the strong family path. And we went through a whole process of coming up with ours. But for example, some of ours are be adventurous and be genuine. And our 13-year-old just loves those. I think because we have it as a core value and because we talk about it weekly at the family meetings, he's so excited and empowered, like you mentioned earlier, to be who
Mm-hmm.
he is, to choose adventures. And one of ours is personal development, which is a big piece of goal
Totally.
setting. So he wants to build something and he's got to go to the library and 3D print a piece of it. And he gets excited about it because we've set the foundation of these are what our family's about. These are the core values, and the kids all have them memorized and they're up on the wall. And it's important to have that because I think if you kind of have a lukewarm, well, we're a great family, but what does great mean? Does great mean that, we're grateful and we're genuine and we have adventures together, we want to be together? We have to really specify what great is.
And what do you guys share with the families that you work with on how to start and create these core family values? I know we mentioned before every child is different, so is every family. And how do you guys guide families in creating these values for their family?
Yeah, we teach the strategies and we give examples of tactics, but we let everyone to decide their own specific
Mm.
tactics themselves. It's like, well, use the example of working out that we've been talking about. Like, hey, it's good to work out. For some people, it might be walking. Some people might be running. Some people might be lifting weights. Someone else might be yoga. Those are all fine examples of working out, but the concept is
Right.
still the same. Like, you should have core values, and we have the strongfamilyproject.com where we give away the 7 elements of the path, and then we just say choose whichever one you want to start on. Do one for 90 days, so it's not
Hmm.
overwhelming. Spend 90 days. If it's doing your core values, write down a huge list of everything that you find is important. Then we teach a game called Kill, Keep, or Combine, where you and your spouse get together with a list and you compare them and you combine the ones that are kind of similar. Like maybe you have thankfulness and I have gratitude. All right, let's just choose one and we'll combine it. So we whittle it down. So we have a process to go through. Then we sit on them for about a week, and then we talk to them with the kids to get their interpretation. Then we get our final 5 to 7 core values from there. But it's all a process, and people can decide to do
Hmm.
things differently, but still the strategies hold true to give that stress-free approach. Because the most stressful thing is just not having a plan. And like, here's a plan, and here's some steps to do, and then you feel that progress, and you build your confidence as a
Yes.
parent too.
And since we're talking about parents of teens, if you make these core values and your kids are still really little, or let's say even before you have kids, it obviously is a thing you would do with the adults in the home. But if you're starting this process with teens, it's actually really awesome to include them in the process. So I would still do some legwork in the background and think about as parents of what our main goal, our main values probably are. Maybe you have it whittled down to like
Hmm.
15. And then you can ask your teens to make their own list of what's most important to them, and they need to understand that not everything's going to be necessarily adopted, but then they get to contribute. They might be able, like if mom and dad aren't sure about these last 2 values, hear out what they might want to say, so they become like the authors, one of the authors of the core values of the family. And again, as teens, I think having that buy-in is really important.
Yeah, collaboration with teens is huge because it one helps them through their creates an environment for them to think for themselves, like, who am I? What is important to me? What do I value? Is huge in the teen years, especially in building confidence, because all too often, a lot of the moms that I work with and the teens that I work with is like, they don't know who they are and they're forever searching externally to define that. So if you create an opportunity for you as a family and everyone individually in the family to be like, what is important to you? What are your core values? What do you want to prioritize in your life? Really helps them to know who they are, what they like, what is important, what they value, and just really creates an environment for them to build that strong confidence within themselves.
That's very well said. There's a book I was listening to, and I'm going to forget the name right now. It's by Cal Newport on like, are we just going to discover who we are approach, or are we going to craft who we are? And it's
Yeah.
probably part of both. But here's a system for you to help build who you want to be versus just one day you wake up and realize it. And that's critical for the teenage years because they're going through that process of self discovery and then understanding like, all right, well, now I have a system, goal setting system, I have values that can help guide me to this objective versus just waking up and assume it's just going to be
For
there one
sure.
day.
Right. And Honestly, if you don't set up values at home, your kids will find values
Mm-hmm.
elsewhere. And they might not be the kind of values that you hoped your kid
Mm-hmm.
would choose. So starting that at home is important. And we recognize our kids will, hopefully, leave the home one day, find a spouse and start their own family. And we want them to come up with their own core values. And they may very well may adopt some of the ones that they grew up with. And they might think of something totally different as well. But the point, like Joe was saying, was to have them is what's
Mm-hmm.
important. It's almost not less important to know what they are, but to just know that you need to have them set up and to work towards that.
And just either your whole analogy of the family being a team and contributing and the commitment is just such great habits to create, because as you mentioned, when they have their own family one day, to bring that into those relationships is going to help those relationships thrive, because at the end of the day, all relationships need the contribution, the commitment, the accountability, and the space to be able to share how they're feeling, and the other humbly listening. So I love what you guys are doing. I love what you guys are sharing. And I so appreciate you guys sharing it with the Raising Mothers podcast listeners. Before we go, I always ask the guests two questions. So the first one is, and you both can answer both questions, is what would you tell your younger self? So if you were looking back at your younger self as a mom or your younger self as a dad, what would you tell yourself, knowing what you know now?
Yes, for me, and this has been critical in my later life, I wish I had known it sooner, which is just keep a
Mm,
low heart rate. There's this thing in business, the lowest heart rate wins. Like in a negotiation, like everyone getting all flustered and attaching emotions is usually because we're lacking a skill that we wish we had, and it's just coming out as like getting flustered and emotional, which is understandable. However, like breathe a little, work through it. Someone's been there, someone has a solution
mm,
for you, and I could have progressed faster had I detached a little bit of like attaching my personal value to what I knew as a parent, because we were just new and we just had high expectations that were not realistic. And I should have slowed down and enjoyed the process
love
a little
that.
more.
And mine is to not make
Mm,
assumptions because I've learned over time to ask my kids the question of help me understand. Help me understand why this is happening for you. Help me understand what happened at school today. Because I think oftentimes I would go into a place of anxiety because I assumed something that ended up not even happening.
totally. So good.
Yeah.
So good. The last question is, what is one thing that you would want to leave the Raising Mothers podcast listener with? One piece of advice, maybe a quote, or just something that has helped you in your life, in your parenting journey?
Sure. This is a quote I love from Jim Rohn. What's easy to do is also easy not to do. So it's easy to go out, put your shoes on, and go for a walk. It's also easy to just sit on the couch and look at your phone. So I think having that mindset of if I just say yes to this today, let's see where it takes me. So yeah, I think that would be really, it was helpful for me as a mom. What's easy to do is also easy not to do. It almost takes the excuses away from the
I
situation.
love that quote. I've never heard of it. Thank you for sharing. Okay, so the last question is, what is one thing? It could be a quote, it could be a piece of advice you've received, it could be a life lesson you learned. Is one thing that you would want to leave the Raising Mothers podcast listener with?
We were just chatting about this recently, and maybe it's just top of mind, but people think about you a lot less than you think they think about you.
Mm-hmm.
And I think a lot of parents feel judged. They go out there and they do something, and it might not go quite as good, or your kid's just being a kid out there. And sometimes we would react based on what we thought everyone else was
Totally.
thinking. And just having the peace of mind, like, most people probably are thinking about themselves and probably thinking about their day and what they can do, and just giving you that peace of mind, like they're probably not worrying about you, and like just doing what you know is right to work through the moments as parents, because things happen. I think uh, people are a lot more forgiving than we would
Mm-hmm.
assume, and probably not even paying attention in a lot of cases. And so that's what I like to keep top of mind when something doesn't go great out there in public with kids. Like, nah, it just is what it is, and we go on with our day.
I love those that you guys both shared. Thank you so much. And thank you for taking time out of your day. I know you guys are both busy to be here with us and just share your wisdom on confidence building and goal setting. I know there was so many golden nuggets that everyone will be able to take and implement into their own families. And for those of you who are listening, if you want to connect with Joe and Mel more, be sure to check out the show notes, and I'll have all the spots where you can connect to them more. Thank you guys for being on here.
Thank
Thanks
you
as-
so much for having us, Ashley.
Great talking with you.
I'm literally so excited that you took the time to hang out with me here in this space, and I would absolutely love to connect with you more. You can find me on Instagram or visit my website at ashleycahn.co. That's ASHLEYKAHN.co. I'll see you there.